Start streaming. 15 minutes late. Sorry everybody. Just trying, struggling. Okay. Now, share. Copy that. And we're live. It looks like we're
Yep, we
live.
can.
Okay. I'm going to post the link in the Kickstarter comments. I was sorry you're late. Yeah, I don't need to tell everybody exactly how I screwed up. Here's the link to the live stream. Um, I guess maybe we'll wait a couple minutes for some people to join, and then it looks like we're getting some people already, but maybe we'll wait a few minutes before we dive in. I don't know.
Either way.
All right. There's the link. I wish you could do. I wish we could do links in Kickstarter. It won't let you, which is probably the safest thing. But
You can't post a link to the Kickstarter page
you
on
can,
in the
but it
comments.
won't show up as a link. You have to copy paste it, as far as I know.
Oh, interesting. In the comments. That's cool.
My guess is it's a safety thing. So, concurrent viewers, we have 2 concurrent viewers. All right. Let me know when it's live. It says test. Okay. That. Oh my goodness. It's been a little bit of a morning. Our average
Yeah.
watch time for this is 19 seconds, in case you guys were wondering about the stats.
Good.
These are
Good.
live coming in.
People love raw YouTube analytics. Everybody loves that.
Our chat rate is 2, Ira. Can you believe it?
That's good. That's a good chat rate.
It's our best today. So our chat rate is 2, Ira. Can you believe it? When you play that, it plays back through everybody.
Oh, I know. Yeah, no, I know.
I would like to say good morning to everybody joining us. I'm Cody Miller. I'm joined by Ira. You can see he's floating here on my left. We're very excited to have you guys. We're gonna wait for a few minutes because I had some technical difficulties. I was streaming on the wrong channel. Anyways, we got it fixed, and let's see. I would love you guys to let us know how our volume is. Do we sound loud enough? I'm gonna say hello. My name's Cody Miller. Ira, can you talk for a second so they can check your volume?
Yeah, how's this? This is a normal volume for me to speak at.
Okay, so you guys can tell us volume up Cody, volume up Ira, or just thumbs if we're good. Leon says good. All right, Andrew says good. Okay, and also, yeah, we'd love to hear where you're from. Looks like we got Steven joining us from Ohio, and we've got Gunhead from Spain. Steve Davey joining us from Portland. Sounds like volume is good. Volume is good. Beaverton, we've got Brianna and Sammy.
Let's hear it for Beaverton.
Beaverton!
If that's the Beaverton I know.
The Netherlands, we've got Gert van Bruggen. Bruggen? Bruggen. I don't know. Someone joining us from Turkey, and I'm guessing Czechia. Is that the Czech Republic? No longer the Czech Republic, maybe. Czechia. CZEC. Wow. People all over the world are joining us, and this is crazy.
Shouldn't they be asleep?
Also, I want to say David Furno is here. He's going to be helping us pull questions from the chat. Yeah, so let's see. I can't see how many people are currently. How long
I
do
can.
do you think we should?
There's 49 people.
I think we can jump in.
And I mean, it's all recorded, and so they should be able to. If you miss out on the beginning of it, you can go back and find.
Hi, Mom. I see that my mom's in the chat.
Yeah. Hello, Ira's mom. So glad to have you. Worldwide Aridia party. Um, yeah. So, um, looking through the topics that people were asking for, we got a lot of questions. I didn't see a lot of like just general topics, which I was my fault because I don't think I explained very well. I was looking for something like, oh, maybe we should talk about the combat system or the world building. So David and I talked and just thought it would be fun to just give like a general overview of like the design process for Arydia as far as like from the beginning till now. And we're not going to take, forever, but I don't know how that feels to you, Ira, if that would be interesting or if you had any thoughts while you were getting ready um, about a topic. I'm not a live TV host. I design board games. And so, yeah. I don't know. What do you think,
That sounds
Ira?
great. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Go for
Okay. So initially, Aridia started out as a D&D campaign for my board game group who do not play tabletop RPGs. I had only just jumped in on a couple other people's. And so I was like, this will be fun. I'll be the DM and get my board game group to play a tabletop role playing game, and we'll see how it goes. And then I started looking at how much work was involved, and it's a significant amount of time investment to be a DM. My research, it was like going to be around 1 to 4, 5 hours of prep every week, and so I thought there's got to be an easier way. So I was looking for like D&D in a box, and they have really good like content sort of stuff, but there wasn't like here's the miniatures, here's the story, you guys just enjoy it. And that's sort of the catalyst for designing Aridia was, okay, if this isn't out here and I'm going to be doing this work for my friends anyways, I'm basically, why don't I just make a D&D campaign in a box? And that was sort of the start. And so my first game was Aridia, my first game was Zaya, and so I had a bunch of Zaya components. So I sort of started with hexagons, and I just like reskinned them, and started mashing things together, and that's when I was like, okay, I would love like some board game aspects to be part of this campaign, and that's when things started sort of coming to a head, and I felt like, okay, I need to make a choice. Either I'm making a fantasy Zaya, or I'm making something new that's more like a hybrid of a board game and an RPG. So that was I remember it was probably 2015 that I was like this choice. I remember sitting down with Abby and like I really love both of these. I want to do both of them. What do I do? And so I thought about it, talked about it, and really felt like making Aridia was the thing I wanted most. And so that's where sort of this game, as you guys are seeing it on the Kickstarter page, came from. In 2017, 2018, was it, Ira, that we did the Embers Kickstarter for Zaya Embers. Do you remember?
I thought it was sooner than that.
When was it?
I thought it was-
2016
No.
Yeah.
Oh, the Embers. I don't know.
for the Embers
Yeah,
Kickstarter?
I think
David
Embers
was here.
It was before I was here. Yep.
Embers was 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for Aridia, I was working on Aridia all 2015. You contacted me in 2016, and you're like, "Hey, I want to do a solo version of Zaya. I think it'd be awesome." And I was like, have no idea how you would do that, especially since like um, I don't know how you do solo games with Zaya, because Zaya was completely designed around multiplayer. I don't know. Do you want to give from your perspective? Because for me, it was like, where did this come from? But yeah.
Yeah, it's a little, I don't know how on topic it is related to Arydia, but I guess I can say very briefly that um, we talked about it, and my pitch to you was we want the solo experience to be representative of the multiplayer experience. We want it to feel like the multiplayer experience, but also sort of be true to the nature of solo gameplay, where the sort of solo player is sort of free to take more time to puzzle things out, and yeah, so I think those are the guiding goals that we used for solo design on Zaya. Obviously, being a competitive game and changing it into a solo experience maybe required a little more sort of creative thinking
Oh, for
than
sure.
and taking some liberties with it. And I think one of the fun things about the solo experience of Arydia, and I saw some people in chat were asking about that like it really, I think, can stay true to the core of the idea.
Yeah.
So I think I mean you've obviously thought about that a ton. We could talk about that more. Sort of the different player counts and how sort of that's worked for Aridia.
For
But
sure.
those, those are some initial thoughts.
Yeah, and I think like for our overall view of Aridia, like we worked on Zaya Embers together, and just had so much fun collaborating on that, and um, and we just sort of hit it off, and we started talking on the phone every week, and then sort of over the course of that year, I was still working on Aridia just by myself, and I really didn't feel comfortable sharing it because I was like, there's it's not complete. It's still like very ethereal, and so I think it was in 2017 that I was like, okay, I sent you like the prototype copy, and I was like, I think I'm ready to like publish this in 2017. And I sent you a copy, and and then it was there were a lot of systems that were very basic, specifically like the combat system. And so I sent it to you, and you play tested it, and I think you had some really kind and really helpful feedback. Like Cody, I think the general idea is fantastic. I do think it's worth spending time looking at like the combat system, and not in a like Cody, you have to do this kind of way, but in a like I think what you've got here is special, and can we make it more special? And so at that point, that's when you jumped in as to help me develop the combat system specifically. And
Yeah.
so we worked a long time on a lot of different versions of that. This was when I was building this house here where the office is, and so a lot of times I'm like swinging a hammer during the day, and then like checking Ira's notes at night, and Ira's working on like different ways we could do hit points, and we worked on the grid system. We came up with that, and before combat had this weird, there were these things called BIPS dice, which
Oh,
was,
we get
do you remember
Bips.
that?
I was hoping we were going to get to talk about Bips.
Yeah,
So
so BIPS stands for bludgeoning, impaling, piercing, and
slashing. Yeah, there was
slashing.
piercing. Yeah, there was like impaling and piercing. I was like, why do we have impaling and piercing? Those are the
It
same.
is totally different. Totally different. Aaron. Anyways, new stretch goal. We're going back to the BIP system.
Well, and that
No,
was
please.
when everything was 1 HP too.
Every
I mean, that's
every
a
monster had
huge,
one hit point,
huge thing.
and combat was like it was very rudimentary, and not a fun puzzle. And anyway, so very fun to like have you joined the team, and then like to develop that system that we have now, which I feel so good about, where you're swinging. Like I feel like the weapons really have this kinetic feeling of like I'm coming down from the top with my axe, or I'm like stabbing in and coming up with my dagger. Like all those hits feel very, I guess, visceral, and like, oh, it feels so satisfying to fill the monster's 2D grid up with wounds rather than just a number that we're counting down. Like, oh man. So yeah, been very, yes. I can see Andrew in the chat is making fun of bits. Thank you. Yes. Um, yeah. So I don't know how much we want to go. I feel like we probably covered a good amount. What do you,
Can I say one other thing about the
Please.
combat?
Whatever.
Yeah,
Whatever.
so, so I felt like, I mean, just to give the history, like a little context for it, like Cody had been working on it for a really long time. And I think there, like, even before I touched anything, looked at anything, you'd already like really had a clear vision and a sense of it. And then when you shared, like, here's the current version of combat, it was like, it had been formed enough that you were able to sort of accept feedback on it and pivot. And you were like, I think the core idea is good, but here's like the combat system is kind of, I'm really open to changing it. And so I remember I was actually going back and looking at old files to see like, well, what did I actually pitch to him for the combat revision?
Yeah.
And we had, like, you were like, we need to have a D20, and we had this grid that was like, I made it in Excel, that was like a bad Excel file that was just a bunch of like squares.
I still have that. So, oh man, David's going and grabbing a prototype. We should.
And I feel, and I had,
okay.
And my pitch to you was that it was going to be like this grid, and then we were going to put Tetris pieces on it.
Yes.
And that was like okay. But then you had the idea for like the directional movement, and I feel like the grid combined with the directional movement was really the thing that, like, those two ideas together.
I remember
combat work.
I remember that call, specifically that moment when, because I was playing with the Excel version that you had. I was playing with the Excel version that you had made, and we were talking about it. I'm like, what if your sword would like cut across them? And I remember like placing wound markers like in a row and going, yes, that. And that was like, I had that image in my head. That's like the image on the Kickstarter page where it's like, roll the die, here's your attack pattern for the sword, and then on the monster, boom, 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 you hit across, and it's like, oh, what a great feeling.
I believe someone was shouting directional damage at you the entire last year.
That would be David. I'm trying to think. I don't know if you can see, I've got prototype stuff here that if I put that.
That does show up
in the view.
Right there.
Do you want to push that a little closer?
Yeah.
Cody, we're getting a bunch of questions. We're getting a bunch of questions in chat.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not sure to what extent we want to try and answer them.
Yeah, we can jump in. I just wanted to show a couple nostalgia things just for fun. These are
show them.
Old components that David's like, do we need these? Can we throw these away?
David has thrown a lot of things away.
These aren't even the oldest. These are like, I'm not even sure. You guys might get a spoiler here. We'll see what's in here. Oh, Zaya component. Hey, look. This was my original idea for the map. This is what I sent to my manufacturer. I was like, look at this. You can like pop it out. Can we figure out how to do this? I glued basically a Zaya punch board to a thing, and then that was the genesis of that. But for combat, here's like a player mat, one of the older. That's not the oldest, but that's like an older one. Here's like a another older one. So one thing people ask about is table space, and we talked about this a little bit in one of the live streams. But basically, I took one of these older playmats and we cut it in half and put content on both, so you can arrange your table space so much nicer, so much easier than you used to. So I don't think there's anything else in here I want to. Thank you, David. All right, let's jump to the Q&A part. Does that sound good, Ira?
Yeah, that sounds great. Do you want to, maybe we'll alternate picking questions, or do you want to, do you want me to curate the questions and suggest them? Or how do you want to do it?
Sure.
I'm able to see the chat while also talking with you pretty easily.
Okay, it's very difficult for me. I think
Okay.
I asked David if he wanted. Have you been grabbing any questions from chat?
Yeah, I can grab questions. Can you move the microphone closer?
The microphone's on this actually,
Oh, okay, perfect.
so I think people can hear you.
Take that work. I'll just talk loud.
Also, you're in the Zoom call. Trying to think
Yeah.
how that would work. Nope.
There we go. So I can read.
Is that okay? Did you have any that you saw to begin with, though, that we had? Oh my goodness, it's a wall of text. Ira, did you see any that you wanted to jump in on?
Sure. Michael Lloyd asks, does Aridia have any reasonable capacity for expansion? So do you want to talk, Cody, a little bit about your thoughts? I mean, obviously we wanted to make sure this campaign was successful first, but now that it seems to be pretty successful, do you have thoughts on that?
Yes, I think as far as Aridia goes, my initial design for Aridia it basically spans 9 regions. I have, like, in this drawer, I've got I've got a book full of tiny little maps. Let me see if I can grab it.
That's why I wanted to ask this question.
Okay.
So I'm like, you've thought a lot about this. They should know that you've thought a lot about this.
Let's see if.
That's what design looks like, everybody.
So this is. I'll grab one of these. So that's funny because these are like locations in Aridia so I don't really want to like spoil them. Trying to find one that wouldn't be much of a spoiler.
I'm noticing that other people ask that question too. So
yeah. So basically, all these have, like, this is a map and here's a story, a location basically, and so I have for the game I had 9 like regions, like full regions. So the basin is one of those 9 regions, which is where this game of Aridia takes place. So basically, the game was so large, I had to cut 8 regions out of it to realistically make a product. This was back when I was making a D&D campaign. I was like, we're gonna do all this, and it's gonna take 5 years. Like, okay, I want to make this a real thing, so we like focused in on one region. So as far as like what we could do, I have content and design ideas for up to 9 or 8 more stories, as far as like 8 full campaigns. If we get to all 8 of them, or maybe we condense them into like 3 or something, I don't know. But as far as like expandability, yeah, I've got so many ideas. That being said, I feel very good about what we are doing in Aridia. It is a full, like, complete campaign. It's not just like an intro. So I want you to feel really good about what you're getting. You're gonna have a great journey with your friends. So.
Question?
Yeah.
So someone said, not sure if this was mentioned, but will there be some magical weapons or any sort of enchantment options with weapons? I was thinking that'd be also a good jump off point to just talk about like what is magic in Aridia too.
Sure, Ira. Um, I'm trying to think.
Start with magical weapons.
Um,
People want to know.
People want to know. I think this is not a topic I'm ready to discuss yet.
Da-da-da.
So can I
Yeah, yeah.
just respond?
Yes,
So
thank you, Ira.
we have drafted a whole update on loot and the whole loot system. And so I think just stand by for that. I've written some stuff down. Cody is really hates spoilers. Like if he could have sold this game without showing you anything at all about this game, he would have done that.
I just
I
wanted it to be the picture, the cover art, and then just a question mark and be like, trust me,
Right.
it's so good. I just don't want you to like. I want you to go in blind with your friends if possible.
And I'm like, I want to know everything that's in the box. I don't care. It's fine. Totally. Right. So I feel like we're finding the right balance, but I guess on the loot point, we will discuss that in more detail, and you'll see it in a loot update.
Yes.
I will say, so this is just to piggyback a little bit off of the loot question and weapons. Smiggy05 asked, will all weapons of a type have a similar attack patterns? For example, all swords go left to right. Yes, I'm so glad. You asked about that, because that is absolutely the idea. And then we can make certain monsters or enemies like vulnerable, more or less vulnerable to certain types of weapons because of the way that the directional stuff and attack patterns work.
Yeah.
So yes, that's absolutely part of the design for combat and loot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that definitely makes us very happy. Like, oh, I'm the dagger guy. My dagger does this thing when that monster comes up. Yeah, feels really good. Yeah, and as far as like spoilers and loot and stuff, is there cool stuff for you? I think is sort of the gist of the question. Like, I see that there's like a wooden sword and then like a broken sword. That's what we're showing, and like the gloves aren't like nice. They're like damp and moldy gloves. That like, is that what we're gonna get? And that's like, we are just showing you the beginning of the game, and we want you to feel that sense of progression from like, wow, I'm this outcast exile who has nothing, and you're gonna progress through the game and get there. There is good stuff, so I think you'll be very happy with what you get. So,
ready for a question?
Yeah, go for it, David. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to move on to the next thing. I was thinking you could talk about complexity. Thomas Stock and Derek Holt both asked about complexity.
okay.
And I was also thinking you could add something about the decision like dynamic on your turn. Like, what are you spending your attention on? Like, where do the decisions come in the game? Where do you want people to be spending their time thinking?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as complexity goes in the game, I think first, thank you everybody for all these awesome questions. I can see the chat going by, and I'm terrible at multitasking, which is why I'm not the one trying to read the questions. But thank you for the questions about complexity. I think with a game, as like you can see when you scroll through the campaign page, there is a lot going on in the game, and complexity, I think, can become a big issue as far as, is the game fun to play? So I think it's really easy as a designer to come up with systems. So like, oh, okay, we want the players to like have to track the durability of their armor, and we want monsters to have these hit grids, and we want players to be able to explore on different levels, and this campaign goes on, and like all of these things, at the root, everything needs to come into a state of, is it fun to play in the moment, and is it overwhelming? And so design aspect that Ira and I talk a lot about is your mental overhead, and that's sort of the term we use to say how many things is the player having to keep track of in their mind while they're playing this game, and we constantly want that to be as low as possible. Do you feel like that's correct, Ira?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we thought a lot about the way combat works for monster turns, that we didn't want monster turns to take too long. And so like
Yeah.
literally you can have a monster turn that is like 5 seconds long. You flip over a card, you increment one value, and they're done, and now it's your turn again. And we wanted to be engaging, and so obviously the monsters have to be challenging and interesting too.
Yes.
So they don't obviously always do that, but that sometimes will happen. I think another thing to talk about in terms of complexity is as you level up your character, you gain equipment, you gain loot, you gain skills, you unlock things in the skill tree.
Mm-hmm.
You're building it over time. So it's not like you start the game and you have 1,000 things to pick from.
Right.
I know a lot of people know Gloomhaven, so I'm just going to use that as an example.
Sure.
When I first played Gloomhaven, you pick up your hand, and the most complex moment in the whole game is when you're starting, your hand is at the very beginning, when you have like 100 choices, like incredible number of permutations of all of the different options you can take. And I found that to be a little overwhelming. I mean, once you played the game, obviously Gloomhaven is great. Once you play the game, you get used to that and it's comfortable. I felt like when I was working with Cody on combat and on sort of the progression system, that's not what we wanted. We wanted, at least I wanted, I'll speak for myself. Cody, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Sure.
I didn't want like overwhelming complexity at the beginning. We wanted it to build up over time. And then you get to all the permutations. I mean, by the time you're level 10 and you have 13 skills to pick from, like that's a lot of permutations of like just which skills are you going to go out with when you have 5 to pick from,
which is just one aspect of your character,
just one aspect, right? Exactly.
And I think as far as like the complexity, like we want the complexity to be fun focused. So like which skills am I going to bring out of the 5 that I can take with my character at any time? To me, that's a fun decision of like, oh, I love this and I love this. I only have 5, so I'm gonna like trade this out, and then I can talk with David about what he's bringing, and then we can, so like I'm gonna generate a bunch of the shared resource combo, and David's gonna spend a bunch of it. So I'll build my character based around generating, and he's gonna build his based around spending. That's like a fun complexity. Complexity that are things that we are trying to avoid would be like damage over time effects. Those are really difficult, or like status effects, which is a staple for for a lot of role-playing games, which can be really difficult to implement in a way that doesn't require a lot of mental overhead. And so one of the things that we are able to use is our threat deck and our travel deck, which we can take cards and we can put them into those decks, and then you shuffle those decks, and then at some point you're going to draw a card that will have an effect, and that's something we can do over the course of the campaign that you don't have to remember. The game just remembers it. So maybe you got, for example, if you're traveling the world map, you can become exhausted, which is you take a card and you shuffle it into the combat deck, the threat deck. And so you're traveling the world map, and sometime later in combat, you're going to draw this exhausted card. And you don't have to remember that, oh yeah, when we were traveling earlier in the game, we got exhausted, and now we have the exhausted status effect. And like when we're next time in combat, no, it's the game remembers you grabbed the card and put it in the deck, and now that may come back 2 sessions later, right? Depending on how much combat you do, that could come back a long time later, and the game is remembering, not you. And so that's part of the fun in our design is trying to do things where you feel like the game remembers, the mental overhead is low. What you're processing are the fun choices. Like, how should we take this monster out? How do we want to approach this situation? And the things that aren't as fun, we're trying to do as much as we can on the back end, so that
to program them out.
Yeah, to program those things out mechanically. So.
Can I add to that?
Yes,
Just
please.
To piggyback on another question, which is there have been a couple questions about variable difficulty options, and I just wanted to say definitely yes. Exactly for the reasons that Cody has been talking about, which is we have this deck, we have this travel deck. It's super easy to tune those to make them easier or harder. So yes, we're definitely going to be including variable difficulty.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the whole point is for people to have fun in a way that's fun for them. And you might be playing with little kids who are maybe newer to gaming, or people who are less familiar with the genre, and you want to just have an easier time of it. And there might be some people who are like, we have a hardcore gaming group and we want like super hard combats and super hard things. That's gonna be fine.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things that we have is Ira has programmed.
Oh yeah,
and this is a little spoiler, but Ira's going to bring this. He's going to do a video at some point and show you exactly how this works. But Ira's programmed a combat simulator, which you can feed a bunch of variables into, and then you can get results. And so that's one of the tools we can use to tune combat. So we want baseline combat to feel challenging and fun. I think we have so many, I don't want to say knobs and dials, but like we have so many ways that we can tweak combat very simply. And that's one of the things that we're looking at as we're getting towards like the final round of playtesting stuff, is like what difficulty modifiers are going to be best to ship with the game. We don't have that locked in yet as far as what we're going to do, but yes, we want to have you feel like something along the lines of like when you play Halo, it's like easy, normal, legendary, that kind of like, hey, we want to play this game on hard. It's gonna
challenge us.
Yeah, it's really gonna push us, and so that's one of the things that we're looking at putting in. And exactly how we implement that is not locked in, but yes, we want to do that. So,
and Kenneth Martinez asked, will there be variable difficulty options for when replaying? And so I think the difficulty, that can be a way of adding replayability as well.
Yep.
To ramp the difficulty on a second or third play.
Yeah, totally.
And working that in like a natural feeling way too.
Yeah.
That's something we care about.
Yeah. I have some other thoughts that I'm not sure will make it in the game, so I don't know that I want to say anything, but just thinking about like a combat, just I don't know if you know Last of Us Part 2. The video game has a story-based mode where it's basically you can't lose, and I have thought, like, would it be fun for people to just role play the combat? So it's like, all right, here are the monsters, and it's like, explain how you defeat them. You definitely defeat them. And you're just doing it for the story. I don't know if that would be fun. But
aiming at those players that aren't interested in like the 4E like complexity.
Yeah.
They're just there to like experience the game with each other. Yeah.
I don't know if that would be good, but it's an idea I have. Anyways, that's what you get when you're filming things live.
Incomplete ideas. Would you like another question?
Yeah. And you can just read their name and then whatever.
Yep. Valentine Beck says, don't know if this has been asked, but I still don't understand how moves work when you are in the zoom-in areas. Is there something different when enemies are on the board and when there are none? And I am going to add on also maybe talk about the overworld too, as you like go from the overworld to the locations and like,
thank you.
Yeah, what mechanics are involved.
Sorry, what was
Valentine.
Valentine.
I believe I'm saying it right?
Yeah, so in Arydia, the game has two game sort of play states that you flow between as you're playing through a session. And so one of those play states is adventure mode, and then the other is combat. And so when there are monsters on the board, you move into combat. And combat is what we've been talking about this morning, where every action, every space of movement is accounted for. Everything is basically a resource. So it's like, I'm going to spend one action to move 3 spaces. I'm going to spend this action to use my sword to attack this enemy. You guys, I think, understand tactical combat. And so the adventure mode is when enemies are no longer on the board. So when you are not fighting, you're in adventure mode. And adventure mode is when you are exploring the world, specifically in the zoomed in locations. So when you're traveling the world map, as David said, there's a resource management, minor press your luck sort of mini game that as you move along the map, you reveal these cards, and you have to basically, your characters will spend stamina to explore the world map. When you run out of stamina, you'll want to return back to your town, rest up, and then go back out again. But when you find a location, such as a village that doesn't have any combat, you're going to go in and you're going to explore it. It's still a tactical map, and you won't know whether, when you're exploring somewhere, if you're going to get into combat or not. That's not something we're advertising. It doesn't say, like, this is a combat place, this is not. You are truly exploring. It's like, I don't know what's going to be here. And maybe 90% of that is non-combat. And then all of a sudden, depending on a choice you made, now you're in combat. And so we want the world to always feel believable, is a word that we use a lot. And like, completely want you immersed in it. So every location you have, every location you explore on the, can you grab me the Exiles camp? Mm-hmm. Every location that you explore has a fully complete tactical map that has, so this is the very first map that you'll see in the game. You can see it has squares, but it also has different terrain types. So traveling through this, like over these logs and this campfire has double dashes. So a single dash is normal terrain. A double dash like this is difficult terrain. It costs 2 movement to move through. Black lines are walls, and dashed lines are obscuring terrain. So you can't, your line of sight isn't there. So every map is completely built for combat, but you don't know if you're going to have combat here or not. Okay? And so as you're exploring, I completely lost where I was. Here's a map. Ira, what were we talking about?
Traveling through the maps?
Oh, adventure mode.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in adventure mode, it's more freeform. I'm really sorry. Valerie, what's her name?
I believe it was Valentine or
Valentine. Okay. Sorry, Valentine. I'm getting to it. So, adventure mode, you explore, and it's freeform in that there aren't player turns specifically. So you can, as a group, say, hey, what do we want to do? And you're adventuring through this area. And you can say, well, I want to talk to this guy. And someone might say, well, I want to see what this event is. Or I want to see, if we explore what's at the top of this map. And you guys can discuss what you're going to do. And then one of you will say, okay, I'll take the action. I'm going to talk to this NPC. And then they'll place their miniature on the space or adjacent to the NPC, and they'll say, I'm taking the action to talk to them. And then the other players get to, before that action takes place, they get to put their miniature wherever they want within, I'm trying to think how to say this.
The current map tile?
Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So it's freeform. I'm going to do this, but you still have to fully path. So you don't have to count how many spaces you're moving. It's not like you get 3 points of movement and then an action. In adventure mode, you can move as far as you want to take an action, but you do have to path correctly. In other words, you can't walk through walls, you can't teleport through things. So maybe there's an event that if you walk through it, it's going to trigger and you'll have to draw this card. If there's no way around it, you will have to, like when you're moving through it, you will trigger it. So am I being clear, Ira?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay, so it's freeform, but the rules still apply. And the goal of this is, if you've played a tabletop role-playing game, I wanted to try and capture that feeling of like, okay, you're in the town. What do you want to do? It's like, well, let's go to, the pub and let's, see what's going on there. And then the dungeon master can say, okay, you're in the pub. You see X, Y, Z. What do you want to do now? And
ready for anything at any moment.
yeah, and part of that freeform is like, wow, you traveled to the pub so quickly. Like, that feels really good from a narrative standpoint. So previously it was like, okay, you get 3 movement for an action. And so like, it's your turn. So you're like, I want to talk to this NPC. It's like, great. I spend an action to move. I spend an action to move. I spend an action to move. Now I'm next to the NPC. It's your turn, Ira. On my next turn, I'm going to talk to the NPC.
He's shaking his head.
And it's like, that is not, that's not what we wanted. And so that's why this flow of like, oh, I really like, this guy looks cool. I want to like go talk to him. Or maybe you're returning to a place and you're like, I know where this person is. We want to be as respectful of your time as possible while still, because I mean, you could do things where it's like, well, we'll just house rule it. And like, if you're going to house rule something, I want it to be the official rules. If it's better, why not be the official rules? So this took a while to develop and figure out, but this sort of like freeform, because when you say freeform as a board gamer, I get like the shakes. I'm like, ugh, don't do freeform. That's terrible. So I'm saying freeform, but there are strict rules to it. It is freeform in the sense of you don't need to count the spaces. And also player turns. I don't know, Ira, do you want to, I feel like I've talked a lot. Do you want to talk about player turns and, or maybe we should start the next topic as it's a Q&A.
I've got a topic.
Go for it, David.
All right.
This leads in well with the interaction in the adventure.
Okay.
Kenneth said, didn't mean to spam questions, but how is questing and decisions handled in solo mode?
Ira, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, so obviously I really care a lot. I mean, Cody does too, but I care a lot about solo mode. So I play a lot of solo games myself, and one of the great things about Arydia in terms of solo is that sort of there are 2 different, as Cody's been talking about, there are these 2 different modes of the game. There's the adventure mode where you're sort of exploring the overland map, you're exploring the areas of town, and then there's combat. So let's talk about those 2 different things as it relates to solo. So for adventure mode, you are exploring around the map. That is like the overland map and the zoomed in maps of the locations. That's like completely seamless. That's exactly the same experience that you're going to have in multiplayer. When you speak to an NPC, you will draw the card from the index and see their text on the front. Now, part of the design goal of Aridia is to sort of welcome role playing into the experience, and so you probably aren't going to read that out loud in a voice, which you might do if you were in a group of people who are sort of in a role playing mood.
Definitely.
Right, but that's fine. You can still read that to yourself, and then you're going to get to decide. So this example that Cody is showing, you're going to get to decide which of those actions or which of the sort of conversational branches you want to take before you flip that card over as the solo player. So that you're still going to get some of that sort of conversational experience out of combat.
Definitely.
In terms oh, go ahead, Cody.
And this has been something that actually we did a significant amount of work on and was not in the initial design. Where initially it was, I very much was like, this needs to be 2 to 4 players. You need that person to be your guide and to run the cards. And I don't see how we can do this. And talking with people on Board Game Geek and Ira, people are very passionate about the solo aspect. And I felt like, okay, if we're going to do this solo aspect, it can't be tacked on at the end. I'm not good. Like, I feel like most co-op games can be solo, because you
But
can
true
like
solo, you really wanted to do true solo. I mean,
right. That was the
that was the thing.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, is like yeah, I can do a solo game where it's like sure, you just play as three characters and you're basically playing a three-player co-op game. You can do that, but for me to put one player on the box, it had to be this is designed like we have thought from the ground up. If you are playing this all by yourself, it needs to be the best solo game we can make it. Like I want it to be an epic experience for the solo player, not a tacked on experience. Otherwise, we're just going to say it's a co-op and you can do whatever you want. So that's why we went back and like I went back and redesigned a lot of cards and a lot of encounters, not in the sense of like, oh, I'm this cool thing's not happening anymore, but how can I organize the information that you're getting on the cards and through the gameplay in a way that a solo player truly experiences surprise and delight of like, I want to make this choice, and anytime you're making a choice as a solo gamer, you will not know if I don't want you to know what the outcome of the consequence is, you won't know. It'll say if you're gonna do this, draw this card. If you're gonna do that, draw that card. And those decisions will feel just as impactful and meaningful to a solo player as they will in a group. And I feel like as a result of that work, the group play is better too, because now if you're the guide and you're running a card for somebody, you will have some information, but you won't like all that information that is hidden is now cut off from you too. So you get to role play as a character, but you also get to experience that like I don't know what's gonna happen. Like this guy's mad at us, and we have to make a choice. What are we gonna do? Even though you're acting as the DM or the guide for the people, you don't get to know either. So you're as excited as everybody else, and so that's I don't know. That feels really good to me. So
Yeah. And can we just talk briefly about combat, solo and
yeah.
combat?
Oh yeah. That's very important.
Yeah, so obviously combat is a significant part of the game too. And so the structure of combat is the monsters get a turn. So you flip over a card from the threat deck, and that sort of tells you, what the monsters do. And then a player gets a turn. Not all the players, just a player gets a turn. So in a solo game, it's going to be monster player, monster player, monster player. In a multiplayer game, it's going to be monster player, monster player, monster player, player. Right. So it just alternates in the same way, regardless of the player count. And so that allows us to balance the combats across multiple different player counts. Of course, it's still different because in a larger game, you have a larger hit point pool, and there are more targets that the monsters can be targeting. So I mean, obviously, it's not just like completely straightforward, but that core idea of monster turn, player turn allows us to have a consistent world where, like it just, I know I don't want to make too many comparisons to Gloomhaven, but in other games, including Gloomhaven, you walk in and it's like, well, if there are two players, there are two monsters there. But if there are four players, then there are four monsters there. And you're like, well, what is that? Like, what is, so in Arydia, there's a consistent world. You walk in and like, if you're playing true solo and you walk in, like there are four monsters there, or there are six monsters there, and like it's just you against them, and that's how it's going to go. And I think that was that was something I really appreciate about the design of Arydia.
Yeah, thank you, Ira. It makes me very happy. I do think solo is probably going to be the more challenging, but again, we have those tools to balance the combat, which are a lot of our playtesting moving forward is going to be focused on that, like really locking in every combat, going through using the simulator, and at all player counts, making sure that combat feels just right. So
the skeleton of combat you've built allows for those changes quite easily. Yeah. Cool. Derek Holt again is saying, are there negative consequences for dying and exhaustion? What is a total party wipe?
Yeah.
Well, I added that.
So there can be negative consequences. We're not going into those. So if you So like exhaustion is very simple. If you are traveling the world map and you become exhausted, you take a card out of the index and you'll shuffle it into the threat deck, which is used for combat. So you're traveling the world map, you become exhausted. Later on, that card is going to come back during a combat, and it'll be like, oh, right, I remember back when we were traveling, we really pushed ourselves. We're exhausted, and now we have to pay for that. The game remembers what you were doing, and that is really fun to me. We're not going to get too deep into the weeds on mechanics as far as like exactly what each thing does. In combat, your character can be knocked out, so you can be knocked down in combat. If you're playing in a group, if you're playing in a party, you can combat doesn't end. Combat will keep going. Other players can come and pick you up. You can spend stamina to try and recover yourself back up. So the only time that combat would end in defeat is if all the party is knocked down. So if the entire party is at 0 hit points, then you're going to go, and we have a special rule for you. You go to the index, and you're going to draw out an event. That event is number 999. And I'm not going to spoil it, but the game will continue playing. Your story will continue, but you'll go through this event, and I'll let you discover that. Or maybe you'll go through the game and you'll never get knocked down. My goal is you're definitely going to get knocked down, so. That's Ira's job with the combat simulator. Okay, do you have another?
Yeah. I am sorry I cannot read those characters, but
That's okay.
Someone asked, are the event or NPC's reactions going to change as time goes by?
That is a great question. So I'm going to take just a minute. This is one aspect that we haven't done a great job of highlighting in the Kickstarter yet on purpose, because we're going to talk about this, and it's not, it doesn't make for an amazing bullet point, but I do think we're going to go into it in an update. So in the game, there is what we're calling our index. Our index contains 2 decks. There's an active deck and an inactive deck. The active deck these are all the cards in the game that are currently active. So NPCs that you can talk to will be here. And this, you can see how small this index is. This is not all the cards in the game. This is this is just what we have for the prototype. This is just like, so I want you to know there are a lot of cards in this game. What I'm holding here does not represent that, but it's just an example for you. So as far as NPCs and the world remembering, one thing we do is NPCs have different states. A state is basically what their card is in the active deck. So if you talk to a character and they needed something, you go out, you find it, you come back, and you give it to them, we can update that NPC's state. So we would take the NPC card, and it'll say like NPC 1 is currently at state A. So when you start the game, all of these will be in state A, and states B through Z could be here. Okay, I'm not saying they all have, like some NPCs only have state A. Some of them have multiple states. It's dependent on the story that you're playing through. But you can take out state A and switch it with state B. And the card will say, basically, in the rules, it'll say, update this NPC because of what you've just done. So you'll take the card out here, put it in here, and put the new card in the index. Sometimes states will change when you're not interacting with that character. So if you're talking to an NPC and their state changes, immediately you can talk to them and it's like, wow, now instead of saying like, I need this thing, they're saying, thank you for this thing. And I'm just saying, this is like on a very basic, generic level. So like, wow, now they know. We can also do things like across the world where it's like, there's 2 people who wanted a thing and you give it to one of them and the other person, like we can update both of those states at the same time. So now when you go to that person's mad because, and I'm not saying this is just an example, right? But we can update states of things that you don't see or things that you haven't even seen yet. So anytime a state change would make sense narratively, we want the game to remember. So again, we're gonna ask you to update cards that you've never seen. So it's like, oh yeah, that map. Oh, also maps. So all the map cards, we can have states on the map cards too if we want. So there's an active and an inactive deck for all the map cards. So like we can play with that in fun ways too. So maybe a character who was somewhere, now they've moved somewhere else, or now they're gone because of what you've done, and we can have the world map reflect that, or the location maps can reflect that also. So states and the index is like a very simple to interact with. We just give you like NPC 1, NPC 8, or map, medium 5, change the state without looking at it. So you're like, okay, I'm going to pull this one out and put that one back. Okay, we've never been there. We don't know what we just did. Maybe it was a good thing, maybe not. And so again, we're just trying to emulate this open world feeling of like, what did we do? What's happening? Like the world's alive and it remembers. And so you don't have to like ever go through like a checklist of things where you're like, oh yeah, because we did this, like we're arriving at this place for the first time. Go through the checklist. And it's like, did we talk to this guy? No. Did we do this thing? No. Did we do that? Oh, we did. Okay, so now the setup is slightly different. It's like, no, we're remembering for you. We're doing all of that. All you have to do is like, so maybe you've never seen map 5. When you get to map 5, if you've updated the state, you're going to just go, oh, map 5. And you'll be like, oh, it will show instead of A, it'll be B. And you'll be like, I know what we've updated the state. What happened? And you'll just draw it. So you don't even have to remember. The game remembers.
The game can also keep secrets from you too.
Totally.
Which is a quite unique thing in board gaming. Like, how do you keep a secret from a gamer who has to do the manipulation of the thing themselves? Like...
Right. We're running the program behind your back, which is fun. All right. Sorry, did you have anything you wanted to put in on?
No, it's great. It's great. I think you're doing a great job explaining it. The chat is excited.
Yay, chat. Okay, good.
Get high.
I think
high train.
Yeah.
We may want to maybe take one final question or wrap up.
It is. What time is it?
It's past 1. Yeah, past
1. Oh, it is. Yeah. Sorry, we're late. All right. Do you have to be somewhere? Do we need to shut it?
No, wait, we got a little time.
Okay. Do you see a question you want to go for the last one, Mr. K?
I don't have anything that I've been trying to keep up in chat at least a bit. So okay. I don't think there's anything like super burning. People are asking about the rule book. So you may want to just like acknowledge.
Okay, yeah. So so we won't take any more game questions. I do just want to do a couple. Maybe these would be better in an update.
You can say it here and repeat it in an update. That's okay.
Sure. So for the rule book, we have a full rulebook. It's internal. Like Steven from One Stop Co-op Shop, who he just got the prototype from Jeremy at Man vs. Meeple. Jeremy mailed it to Steven. Steven just got it, and he's reading through that right now, and he's already played through the tutorial, and he's got a live playthrough, I think, coming on Wednesday. I think I can share that. He emailed it to me, and with a link. So we'll put that in an update that it's coming. We're going to share the rulebook. I would like to, a lot of the things are a lot of the images are like MS Paint bad, of like me just like making an image, like drawing it by hand, and like, this is how it works, Ira. And so the rules are complete and cohesive, but not beautiful at all. And also because when you just like grab screenshots and put it in there, I'm trying to think if there's I don't think there's anything they shouldn't see. So we want to go through it and edit it so that it is presentable. I feel like right now I don't feel great about sharing it in that sense. But as far as is it a real thing? Is it a real document? Is it complete? Yes, yes, yes.
And the other thing, Cody, can I add one thing to that?
Please.
I mean, one of the things that we've experienced with Kickstarter that I absolutely love is that the backers are incredibly generous with their time and thoughts and energy. And so
we want
we want the rule book to be available to you so that when there's feedback, we can actually, sort of accept it and take action on
Totally.
it. So at
Before we
least,
print.
yeah. So Cody, I don't know if you like finalized the idea that we're going to make it available on Google Docs, but I kind of hope that we do make it available on Google Docs so that people can sort of comment and we can respond in the document. I don't know if you're going to actually do that, but I think that could be good.
Yeah, I think um, I think Google Docs would be a good way to do it. Um,
And
then
maybe
people can
there could
put
be
comments, but 100% we want your feedback. I like so many of you are passionate writers and editors and like rules fanatics who are so much better at like going through and parsing rules and like breaking rules as far as like this doesn't make sense this and like finding inaccuracies that like we 100% want you guys doing your A job so that we can make the rules like when you get it you feel like there's no typos, it feels this is great, and so we want that feeling, and I promise you we're going to use all of your ideas as far as like making it the best we can. We're going to look through everything and do all that. The timing of it, honestly, the Kickstarter has been going so much faster and better than I was hoping that like I haven't even got to post the stretch goals on the main page yet. So that's how like far behind I am. I was planning like okay, I mean honestly a lot of just the logistics of things are taking precedence. So one thing is um, shipping in the European countries. Been working on like talking with fulfillment partners over there and trying to get better shipping rates. And so there's things where it's like I could spend my time on the rule book, or I could spend my time on some of these things. And so those things sort of filter down as far as like where am I investing my time? We don't have a giant team of people who are doing all of these things. Me, Ira, and David, and Tess in the social media. So honestly, like our social media campaign is entirely run by Tess. So big shout out to her. If you're here because you saw it on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or anywhere like that, it's because Tess is running all of that and answering tons of questions.
Help her out by posting.
Yeah, like, subscribe, and do all the things where you share it on the medias.
To help her.
Thank you, to help Tess. And in the Kickstarter, all the direct messages that are coming in, David Furno is answering every one of those by himself. I mean, not by himself, but like he's the one typing all those messages up. That's why you can hear some clicking in the background. He's hard at work on that. So even though like we're behind on answering things, as a team, we're working together, collaborating. And also a big shout out to all of you in the Kickstarter comments while I'm like taking family time, which very important to me to that like I love Kickstarter and I love having all the backers and Far Off Games. At the end of the day, my family is the most important thing to me, and Ira, David, we all really feel like we're doing this to support our family, not the other way around. And so like I really want to apologize if the customer service isn't as fast as you were hoping, or if you're having to wait for questions to be answered. We really care and we really want you guys answered. At the same time, we really want to model for our kids and that like family is first. It's more important that I am taking my daughter to ballet and like I am fully engaged there than I'm like on my phone trying to answer questions while she's dancing. Like no, that her moment is never gonna come again as far as like her life is, anyway. So that's just me being me, but yeah, so huge shout out to everybody. So was there anything else logistically we wanted to talk about, Ira, before we stop?
I think this is great. I think the chat reactions have been really positive, and I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for just being so excited. I mean, I think your excitement fuels our excitement too. So
it's gonna be so good, Ira. Seriously, I cannot wait. Oh man, yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Cody. This has been great for me. Thanks so much.
Big shout out to Ira's mom. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited for each one of you. I'm sorry we didn't get to answer all the questions. I can see chat is like just scrolling for me. So also, yeah, big shout out to the backers who have been so helpful while we've been like taking family time. You're just answering every question I go to. Someone has been like kind and thoughtful and pointed people to the right way. Like I love that. So thank you to the Arydia team out there. You guys are doing awesome. So we will see you again soon, I'm sure. So thank you so much. Bye-bye. Stream.